Ghosts of Mars is notorious for being the worst film that John Carpenter ever directed, and today, thanks to our voters on Patreon, we get to find out just how true that reputation is. Can it really be that bad? Why, yes! Yes, it can! Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Hello.
Why are you looking so... not relaxed, that's not the right word, but... you got your hand on your chin, you sort of slouching a bit.
Just feel like it.
Just feel like just that kind of mood. Alright, well...
yeah, it's a Wednesday.
It's a sci-fi movie podcast. We get together, we talk about sci-fi movies, that simple, and this was a vote winner episode. Our patrons voted between... I think they were all Mars-related episodes, maybe? I can't remember. But the winner was Ghosts of Mars, which is the notorious film directed by John Carpenter from 2001. A movie that I have been hearing for 22 years is terrible. So, the morbid curiosity was high, but the excitement was low going into this. I'd never seen it. Had you seen this before?
No.
No? So... yes, we finally get to find out what it is. There's a lot of names in this you'll recognise. There's a lot of faces. We'll go through them in a little minute. But the basic gist of it is it's on Mars. It's the year 2170-something. And a team of Martian police force, the MPF, are sent to a small mining town on Mars, which is being colonised. And they're currently terraforming the planet. They say it's almost done. And they're picking up a prisoner who is wanted for murder at this small town. But when they get there, it seems like a lot of people are dead and there's something dangerous going on. And I'll leave it there as far as description goes, but it ends up in kind of a siege, survival kind of movie. But it's set on Mars, so we'll get into all the stuff. We'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers if you happen to care about spoilers for Ghosts of Mars, of all things. I've got a bad feeling that Tara's going to give me a certain answer to this question that I'm going to have to fight for the rest of this. But, Tara, what did you think of Ghosts of Mars?
Well, I mean, I know John Carpenter has some stinkers in his resume by the end. I don't think this is the worst movie I've seen. But I also don't think it's very good. But it's got some good moments in it. I think it's horribly miscast, like almost across the board.
Do you, when you said you've seen worse, do you mean you've seen worse John Carpenter movies?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen worse movies.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, that's a pretty broad spectrum. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he's got a reputation for his last, 20 years of directing or whatever, but...
yeah, I never seen this one, and I know he did later. The Ward was the last one he actually properly did.
This is his last theater release, though.
Did the Ward not come out in theaters?
That's what I heard.
I thought the Ward got a theater release, but maybe not a big one. But
I glanced through the trivia and it said this was the last theatrical release.
Yeah, but was that trivia written in 2004?
Oh, that's a fair point. I don't know.
Yeah, it may have been, because the Word didn't come out until 2007 or 2008 or something like that. So it's entirely possible that trivia was written in that window when they thought he had no more movies. And from everything I've heard about the Word, we all wish that he didn't have any more movies. But yeah, this sucked. Really, really bad. This was even worse than I kind of thought it would be in my imagination. I have many thoughts about what this movie is. The previous Carpenter films that it's kind of just redoing parts of, all kind of jumbled together with, like you say, horrible casting. It's trying to be edgy and cool in a just post-Matrix world, and it's lame. It's so lame. And the first warning sign is when it comes up at the start saying Screen Gems, because I don't think Screen Gems have ever produced a good movie.
I'm not sure. I don't know that name.
They did the Resident Evil movie, or at least the first one anyway.
This has some Resident Evil vibes.
It does. It has some Resident Evil movie vibes. It absolutely does. And even the music sucks, which really surprised me because I thought because I saw in the credits at the start, John Carpenter did the music, and I thought, oh well, his music's still been pretty good, even in his later years. But damn, this had like so much generic.
It was very
metal.
Metallica to me.
Yeah, it's got a lot of generic power chord stuff when things got going. Um, it, yeah, it was bad. There's some baffling, like, narrative structure in this movie that I'm going to tear apart once we get into it, because it is just baffling little choices that feel like, was this written into the script? It doesn't feel like it. It feels like you were doing some sort of weird Frankenstein edit aftermath.
Yeah, it does I bet you're wondering how I got here.
There's a bookend sort of thing where it's one of the like seemingly the only surviving character explaining what happened, and I'm not so sure I'm convinced that was originally planned. That feels to me like they wanted to like explain everything so that they could narrate large chunks of the movie and just sort of like chop up parts of the thing, because I have to imagine the original cut of this probably was too long. It was probably a mess, and the way they were able to like cut it up and make it a lot shorter was probably to have that surrounding framework of just someone telling us and filling in the blanks, so they could just go from point to point. It still feels slow, don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like it makes it a well-paced film. In fact, one of my problems is that it feels all over the place with its pacing and its structure, but we'll get into all that. So, yeah, I expected this to be bad, and I've seen a couple of the mediocre Carpenter films, but this is definitely the worst I've seen from him.
Really?
This doesn't feel like John Carpenter. This feels like any work-for-hire shitty director from this, like the early 2000s. Like, this could be Paul W.S. Anderson. If you told me this was a Paul W.S. Anderson movie, I'd be like, yeah, I believe it.
I could see it being in the same family, but it doesn't come off to me as Paul W.S. Anderson. Comes off to me as someone going, I want to make a Paul W.S. Anderson movie.
Well, that's the thing. To me, it feels like a shitty director like Paul W.S. Anderson trying to do all of Carpenter's greatest hits, but obviously all of it's bad. All of it does not muster any of the things that it's actually trying to mimic. And that's what's really sad about it, is that it's Carpenter himself redoing parts from his previous movies, and they're all vastly inferior.
Hey, but it broke.
It's... honestly, this was kind of a depressing watch. I mean, I've seen worse, sure, I can agree with that statement, but it was just depressing because this was him. Like, why is it this bad?
I don't have a lot of stock in Carpenter. Like, obviously, Halloween's great.
And The Thing is great.
Assault
on Precinct 13.
I like The Fog, and I've not seen that film.
They Live.
They Live is excellent. Excellent.
It sounds like you listen to a lot of movies you really like, Tara.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that I'm like a huge Carpenter fan. Like you put Carpenter on a pedestal with a bunch of other directors that I'd be like, yeah, I mean, he was great in his prime and stuff, but I wouldn't say that he's like one of the greatest. I don't know. Like, I think Escape from New York was fun, but I haven't seen Escape from LA, but I heard that's worse. This almost feels like it could have been a sequel to that as well.
I mean, it's worse than
they wanted to do Escape on Mars.
I don't know. I think this is easily the worst Carpenter film I've seen. And I've seen John Carpenter's Vampires. I saw Escape from LA. Those movies were not good, but this is worse. And hell, even some of the stuff in his prime isn't all great. Like, I don't like The Fog that much. I think Escape from New York's just okay. But he's got so many bangers kind of sprinkled in between all those that it doesn't matter. So he had a few weaker ones. Who cares? Like, he's got like a swath of great movies. But even his weaker ones from back then, like, when I watch The Fog, I don't love it, but it's still got a lot more style and mood than this does. It's still paced well compared to this. This is cringe-inducing. Some of the edgy shit in this was really, like, my God, Jason Statham's character, every line out of his mouth is, hey, Natasha Henstridge, you were in a species, you're kind of hot. You want to have sex? Like, that's every line. It's him trying to get into her pants.
There are some future stuff in this that I do kind of enjoy. Like, I like that there's a matriarchy, that the people in power all seem to be women, including most of the cops that we see, and at least the ones that are in charge. They all seem to be women. I thought that was an interesting flip for the future, and I like the idea that Mars has an atmosphere to where like people don't have to wear anything; they just go outside now. I mean, the air is not quite where it should be, but in 10 years it will be. So that was like an interesting
It's
setting.
86% done terraforming. They said that at the start. In fact, one of my complaints, and it ties into something you just said there.
Go
I
ahead.
forgot this movie was a matriarchy because it's irrelevant. It never comes up. I almost swore. It never comes up. It doesn't matter. No one ever uses it. They never talk about it. No one ever.
No, because it's normal.
No,
it's normal in this universe. So like it's sort of hinted at, but there's
bullshit.
just little things about it.
No, but it's never relevant to anything that's happening in the movie. Why
the
make that
movie
detail?
is called Ghost of Mars. Like, what are you expecting? There
But
are
I'm just
ghosts
saying-
on Mars.
But you're saying you like something like this detail, but they do nothing with it, and it's
I don't think that's
important.
true. They do a little bit with it.
They do jack shit with it. But this leads me to another complaint, though. The reason why I forgot that is because at the start of this movie, you know how some sci-fi movies have the narration that tells you about the current state and the future, and some sci-fi movies have a text scroll or some captions that come up saying this is, what's going on. This movie has both, but they're both telling you different things. So I will posit this. It is impossible to actually take in all the information they give you at the start, because half of it is really fast captions that are coming up on the screen, and the other half is a random narrator who's telling you about something as well. And I paid attention to the captions. I didn't hear a single word the narrator said because I was reading.
I'm the opposite. I was listening.
Yeah, I was reading
When
the
it started.
captions. The captions told me that it was a matriarchy. It told me the year it was. It told me it was 86% done terraforming. It told me about the structure.
2176 is the year.
Yeah, it told you the year. The narrator, I think, was talking about clouds or something. Or storms. I completely didn't hear any of it because I was reading the captions. It was like right away. This was just 101 filmmaking. You're failing. The information is not being conveyed in a way that can actually be digested. This was sloppy, and it set the tone for just how shoddy this movie is.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a mistake.
To
do both.
Yeah, it's shit. The whole movie's shit, but this was the start of the shit sandwich, and it never got better. And it's a shame because premise-wise, you tell me, oh, we're going to do Assault on Precinct 13 with a supernatural enemy on Mars. That sounds awesome. That sounds like I could have fun with that. Maybe it's not original, but it sounds like something I would enjoy.
It also sounds a little bit like when you read the premise of the film, it's a little like maybe he was inspired by Scientology a little bit. Like, what if there are aliens that are inhabiting, like spirits that inhabit humans and use them as a host,
I do not know enough about Scientology to get any of this reference, but go on.
I think there was a little bit of inspiration there, and then maybe a little bit of Doom inspiration, where you get to Mars and we're trying to mine all of its resources and we unlock something that
I don't think so, Tara, because he didn't start playing video games until after he basically retired. All his video gaming happened.
Well, he had a co-writer.
Okay, true. Okay, maybe the co-writer was a Doom fan. But
maybe he heard about it from a kid or something. He's like, I want to tell you about this video game called Doom.
It was a new hobby he got after he stopped making movies, and
this actually kind of feels like a video game when you watch it. Like you can kind of see the levels and the boss fights, and I don't know, maybe because also it's not military. It's a police officer that you're following, but all the gun work and shooting and all that. It kind of plays like a video game.
I don't know. It's kind of all in one location, though. Video games tend not to be like that.
They move around. They move around inside different structures and prisons, and then they go into trains.
A lot. They go back to that same building a lot. I don't know. I think you're thinking really small scope here for a video game.
Well, in 2001, it would have been, right? Games weren't very big then.
I guess. I don't know. We're talking about a weird point. I want to actually talk about how bad the movie is, because it is absolutely horrendous, and I can't it exceeded my expectations as far as how bad it is.
It also it did a sin for me. First of all, Jackie Brown's in it, which is pretty cool.
I'm going to get to the cast in a minute. We'll go through all the cast members.
But she says they hung them and not hanged. Ugh.
She's an idiot. I agree. Yeah.
She said they
Terrible.
hung them and decapitated them, and then I was kind of confused. Like, what do you hang them by if they're decapitated?
That's well because they were hanging upside down, so they were hanging from their feet.
I know, but if she started off with they hang them and decapitated them, it's a little bit like, well, She said hung, but also like I was just confused by the sentence. Anyway, go ahead. Let's get into characters.
Yeah, so we got Natasha Henstridge. Yeah, Natasha Henstridge from Species is our lead,
We got Sil.
and she is, I think,
Bland.
I don't think she's built for a leading role that's supposed to be the one with the charisma who's talking a lot.
She's super bland. Yeah.
Yeah, making the commands. We have
I actually
Ice,
find her less attractive in this too because she's so bland.
we have Ice
Is
Cube
that weird?
as the prisoner who they're there to get. So he's kind of like he's meant to be cool, he's meant to be badass and whatever. So
He's meant
that's
to be Riddick.
he's meant to. No, that's a weird comparison.
You think that this doesn't have Riddick vibes?
I mean, it came out like the same year, so I don't think it's intentional.
Or pitch Black, I mean.
I think that was a year before, but I still think that's too soon for it to have been inspired by it.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's just meant to be like typical wisecracking, like tough man. Like that's what he is. He's not very good in this either. I mean, all the actors come off bad. Even the actors you know can be good from other things. Like Pam Grier, she's terrible in this, and I know she
is
can be
awful,
good.
Yeah.
But everything she says in this, she's meant to be the leader of the team. She just comes off as try hard with everything she says to try and sound like she's being tough.
And we know she could be tough. She's like only ever done tough roles.
Yeah, we got young Jason Statham, who, like, his entire character is just, I want to have sex with Sil from Species, and everything he says. And I don't mind if he's attracted to her and he tries to make a move here or there, but every other line that comes out of his mouth is him just, like, and he never just says it outright. He's always saying weird things
Gentleman.
like, what?
I'm just joking.
He always says weird things like, "Oh, this could be our last chance to dance." Like, just say it. Just say the words you actually mean. I'm sick of the euphemisms already. It's painful to sit through. So you've got that Clea DuVall. She's not as known as some of these other names, but you might know her from a few different things.
Veep, baby, woo.
Was she in Veep? Well,
Yeah.
she was also in an episode of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I think you'll find. She was the girl who disappeared.
Oh,
Yeah? No?
how elusive.
Anyway, I mean, her character has nothing to do in this anyway. She just kind of stands around.
She's a rookie, right?
She's meant to be a rookie, but it's not like she has an arc because she's a rookie and she, like, grows a pair of balls over the course of the movie or anything like that. She just kind of stands around. That's most of the main players that are worth mentioning. There's a couple of other characters that are a little bit prominent, but not that much. One of my big problems with this movie is, for some reason, and it does this like at least half a dozen times, there's just scenes where they do like these weird crossfades in the middle of the scene where, like, they'll literally just be opening a door and walking down a little bit of hallway, and they'll crossfade as they're coming in the door to when they're just out after the door, and then they'll crossfade again till they're another couple of feet down the hall. So they're not really saving time beyond maybe like 2 seconds.
It looks cool.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, why else would it be there? It's a cool movie, right? So we gotta add cool effects.
It feels like something like a film shouldn't do when they're trying to be artsy. And it achieves nothing. It doesn't build any tension. It doesn't, like, usually you do a crossfade because you want to do a soft transition to another scene, or if you're doing it in the same characters, you want to show a transition of time. But there's no transition of time here. It's just, instead of watching them walk one more step, we're going to fade to when they've walked the next step. And they do it several times throughout the movie, and every single time it's just distracting. Like, why are you doing this? You're drawing attention to the editing style when it's not actually helping tell any of the story. And why this is so baffling to me is because, like I said, this is John Carpenter. He's very experienced. He's made lots of good movies that know how to be edited, that know how to be paced. I mean, it feels so phoned in to me. It feels like he's not even like. It's almost like he's just kind of on a chair yelling action, and someone else is actually making all the decisions, and he's just not giving a shit. Like, he's been paid so they can use his name on the poster, and he'll show up to set, and that's it. That's what it feels like to me, based on the final end product that we're seeing here.
Well, I mean, this was his last film until he came back many years later, right? So maybe he was just done.
Yeah, I mean, well, it felt like many at the time. I mean, in hindsight, it's only actually like 4 or 5 years, I think. But it did feel like a long gap at the time. Obviously, now it's been a way longer gap since he made anything. But,
maybe he'll come back and give us one more.
I hope not.
Maybe he'll redo Ghost of Mars and do it right this time.
No, I don't want to see him direct anything else. He lost, because even at this point, though, he hadn't really made a great movie in over a decade by this point. So, like, I'm good.
What does he do now? Just Destiny or something?
He plays video games. He does music for some stuff. He did music for the new Halloween movies.
I mean, this this editing style was kind of music video-y. Maybe he was like, because his music was so metal in this, he was trying to make like a metal music video.
That doesn't justify anything, but maybe you're onto something there.
Yeah, maybe.
And then the other thing this movie does, which again felt like so weird to me, is that there's multiple times in this movie where characters will split up and will follow Henstridge doing whatever she's doing, and then it'll cut to the present day stuff where the story's being told of what happened, and then it'll go back to the point where they broke up, and you'll see the end of the conversation play out again, and then it'll follow the other person going off and doing whatever they were doing. So we go back, we follow them, and the 2 times we do this, the second time does have some pretty big stuff that happens. The first time, no, it's nothing. The first time they walk away for like a minute, they see one thing, and then it like immediately cuts to when they're already back together again, and it just kind of felt like you could have just shown like a quick snippet of their reaction to this thing. You didn't have to do the whole, we're going to go back and replay the end of the previous conversation and watch them walk for 30 seconds before they get to this other room where they see some bodies and shit. It was constantly doing these little things that felt like an amateur, which really feels weird when you're watching a film directed by someone who is experienced, and not even whether your opinion on Carpenter's super high or not, it doesn't matter. The point is, he's been making movies for 30 goddamn years at this point. This should not be happening, but this feels like some asshole film student who thinks he's doing something, stylish, or he's going to do his weird Pulp Fiction where he goes back and does things in a non-linear fashion.
I mean, maybe when he made a movie called Ghost of Mars, he was like, no one's going to watch this. Might as well just experiment a little bit.
He's made tons of genre movies, though. Like this idea that it's because of what the movie is. And he also co-wrote it. It's not like he didn't have a hand in creating what it is. It's not like he just given a script and he said, oh yeah, I'll get paid for this. So why not? I don't know what the backstory is to this. I don't know how he ended up on this movie or how it came to be, but the final product feels like a soulless, empty, just like the closest thing it feels like it's ripping off from his own movies is Assault on Precinct 13, just purely because it's a siege movie where the cop character has to maybe learn to trust the criminal character and they have to work together to survive. That's very Assault on Precinct 13. But Assault on Precinct 13 is a freaking great movie. It's so well paced. It actually is cool. It oozes cool, like constantly throughout the entire thing, as opposed to this where everyone's wearing
2000s cool.
No, it's not cool. This was shit at the time, and it's still shit now. We're all going to wear leather jackets because The Matrix did it, and we're going to try and pretend that's cool. We're going to have lame one-liners. Like, this didn't work at the time. People shat on this at the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard when you're an old man to think, like, to try to be cool.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's just depressing, okay? Like, it's depressing, it's shit, and, I mean, at least it wasn't that long. It's the only nice thing I can say about it is that it was under 100 minutes.
It was, yeah.
So, all right. I guess we should do spoilers. Spoilers for Ghosts of Mars from this point on. Although, do you have anything you want to say? I feel like you've not really said that much about the actual movie or what you thought about it beyond just you've seen worse.
Yeah, I do think like everybody across the board is miscast or playing the wrong character. I think Natasha Henstridge is, I hate saying her name, Natasha Henstridge. I can't remember what it is. Anyway, I do think that still is super bland, and I think more of what the world could have been like portrayed better through the main character if they like represented the world a bit better, you know? Like it is a matriarchal society and like she is a cop on Mars. Like you could have done more with it or at least had some kind of interesting quirk or coolness. Someone who's a bit more effortless when it comes to that maybe, but I think that Jason Statham's okay. Like he's kind of new at this, I think, around this time. I don't really remember him from much before this.
I think he's in like maybe a Guy Ritchie movie before this. Like not much.
Yeah, okay, so he's pretty new on the scene.
Yeah.
The whole time he talks, like there's a guy in Skyrim who sounds just like him, like he's trying to do Jason Statham from this movie in Skyrim. It's all, every time he speaks, it's the only thing I can hear now is just the guy from Riften in the Thieves Guild. Yeah, I was really sad that Pam Grier is also just so terrible. And I don't think it's any of the I don't really think it's any of the actors' fault or actresses' fault. I think it is just poor direction. Because, I mean, obviously we know Pam Grier, talk about oozing cool. Like, she was Coffee. And Jackie Brown, like, she knows how to do this stuff.
Yeah. And she's like, there's not even like an ounce of cool coming from her in this. Like,
no. It was really disappointing. There are some visceral moments, like people getting limbs and stuff for decapitations that happen, where I was like, okay, I'm interested now. And although the villain is, not great, I do think that he's fun to look at and fun to watch a little bit because, I don't know, it's just he's called Big Daddy Mars. Yeah.
I mean, that's not in the film, though. They never say that in the movie. You're just reading that off the cast list.
I did, yeah. But I read it early, so there was
well, that doesn't mean anything for the movie, though. Yeah,
Big Daddy Mars is here.
And honestly, I think you're overselling him, though, because you say he's the villain and he's kind of the leader of the enemy, but like, he's barely. They don't do anything well. He just looks a bit different. He just stands out visually. That's it. He's nothing. Yeah. He's not even a character.
He stands out visually. He's got like a language. He seems to speak for all of them. So we hear like the Martian language coming through him. And they all do this like self-mutilation when they become inhabited by the ghost of the ancient Martians that have been unleashed due to us, over mining resources. So it's a little bit of like a man can't play God on any planet. We'll screw things up and message. Oh, and another thing I was a little disappointed about, like there comes a point where you see like where the ghosts were unleashed from. And I kept thinking, this doesn't really look alien enough. Like it looks like it was designed for humans. And I wish that it was a bit more alien looking. That's all.
Okay. Well, spoilers then anyway. We'll get into spoilers so we can talk about everything. The movie opens with this train arriving in one of the biggest Martian cities, right? And what did they call it? Crazy? Something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
So I hear Christ when they say it, but I don't remember exactly how it all fit it together.
It wasn't Christ, though. It definitely wasn't that.
No, but I heard the Christ in it. Christy?
Sure. But it doesn't really matter. The point is they get back to this train arrives at the city, and they find no one on it except Natasha Henstridge, who is handcuffed to a pole, and they wake her up, and they bring her in for this hearing, and it's she's kind of confrontational about it. She's like, "Oh, am I being charged with something? Like, the cops have no rights anymore," kind of thing. And they sit her down and they just want to know what happened. And she starts telling the story, and then it just does the fade, and that's it. We're on the train on the way to this town with her and the rest of her team. And they do this whole thing with her at the start where they set up that she's addicted to some sort of like fancy space drug, and I thought,
a
okay,
Mars narcotic.
And very funny, and I thought, okay, fine, this is something to set up and to play off with later. But honestly, they set this up for one reason, and for one reason alone. It's so it can be used as a plot device later, and they do nothing with the fact that she's either supposed to be addicted and either not being completely sober or having withdrawal symptoms. Maybe they just ignore it until it's time to use it as a magic solution to something. So it, like, in hindsight, it was just like a cheap plot device than it was anything else. Like, well, I don't know. I thought that was a bit sloppy.
Yeah, they set up right away that when they find her in the beginning, and they mention right away that she has some sort of narcotic in her. Like, otherwise she seems completely normal. And so that's set up, and then like almost instantly we get a visual of her actually taking a pill and having some hallucinations. So there's a little bit of that. So it's not like, I don't know, I guess they set it up enough to where it doesn't come out of nowhere. And it was in my mind like they're going to do something with this. And when they do something with it, I'm like, all right, so that's what that was for.
Yeah. Like, it's not like a part of her character story. I mean, she barely has a character story, but I thought that's what they were setting up, is that she's going to overcome this later on. Or,
hey, cops are addicted to drugs too. That's what the commentary is. Like, who's the real cop and who's the real criminal here? We're all human.
Like, I thought they were setting up this is something for her to overcome, or maybe the reason why she's taking this stuff is like some personal thing she has to get over. Nope, that would be that would be a real movie. That would be actually...
Drugs are cool, that's what I was trying to say. And might save your life one day.
Like, that would be a real movie, to actually write a character story about it. But no, of course, this movie doesn't have any character stories, so that was the foolish thing to expect. So, yeah, it's... Anyway, they're going to pick up this criminal who turns out to be Ice Cube, who is apparently decapitated a bunch of people. Obviously, as we find out in the movie, that's actually these ghosts of Mars that are doing that. It's not him. But they get to this town, the train moves on because it's got other things to go do. And it's just this team, which is, it's Pam Grier's in charge, Natasha Henstridge is kind of the second in command, and then they've got Jason Statham as Jericho, and then they've got two rookies. One's Clea DuVall, and one's the red shirt, I guess.
Yeah, pretty boy. I don't know.
Yeah, he's got nothing going for him. And to be fair, that's kind of true for all the characters to a point. They have very little. And that's the other thing, is Pam Grier does not last long. Like, after she like sees some of the bodies hanging upside down, and they talk a little bit about what to do, she goes off. They find like a guy hiding like a little like rover thing, and he's saying, "Don't come in, don't let it out." And Natasha Henstridge even reads his lips and figures out roughly what he was saying, and they still try to get in. And I'm like, listen to him, he's telling you. Because so this is kind of the biggest thing this is ripping off is Assault on Precinct 13, but the second thing it's ripping off is The Thing. This idea that there's this entity that'll like take over people, and it leads to so many stupid plot holes in this movie, because they set up that if you kill one of the people who are possessed with one of the ghosts of Mars, the ghost doesn't die, it just kind of goes into someone else, right? Which is kind of a big deal, because it means you can't really just kill any of them, otherwise you might end up just getting possessed yourself and you've solved nothing and you've lost your own life. And yet, repeatedly in this movie, there is just... They kill so many people, and the gall of it is that they have this big scene in the middle where they have this big firefight where they're just shooting dozens and dozens of them, and there's not a concern in the world. And then later on, when they're planning their escape to try and get to the train, I think it's Ice Cube turns and says, "Hey, if we kill one of those sons of bitches, they might just take us instead." And I'm like, where was this concern when you were mowing down like 50 of them earlier? Where did all those ghosts go? Why did none of you get infected back then?
They shouldn't have sent cops. They should have sent an exorcist. Maybe multiple exorcists. A marxist.
That's just the same. That's just the same joke as before. This is diminishing returns right now.
No, I'm setting up a pattern. Comedy comes in threes, baby.
Yeah, but the middle chapter's not usually this bad. Yeah. So, yeah, they end up just kind of like, because Jason Statham goes looking for Pam Grier. This is one of the moments where it goes back in time and shows what happens when he like went on his own, and he goes off and he basically finds an entire army of savages. Which, so it turns out when these Martian ghosts like overtake people, they turn into like Reavers from Firefly, or maybe even a little bit of like the characters in Event Horizon when they get taken over by the cosmic forces.
They just self-mutilate.
Yeah.
Put stuff in their faces and become metalheads.
Yeah, so he sees all this and he sees Pam Grier's head be put on a pike. And I'm like, oh, I guess she's dead. All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's her gone. Sure, okay. And he runs into like 3 other characters who are hiding somewhere, which turns out to be some thugs that are actually here to break out Ice Cube out of prison, which actually leads to one of the dumbest moments in the whole... These characters are repeatedly very dumb in this movie, but one of the dumbest moments is these 3 guys like hold all the cops up at gunpoint, force them to take them to the cell that Ice Cube's sitting in. They open the cell, they go in and hug him, and while they're hugging Ice Cube, the cops just shut the cell door, and now they're trapped in the jail cell.
I thought that was funny.
It was funny, and it might even have been intentionally funny, but the acting in this movie like just doesn't play like anything that's supposed to be a joke or anything that's actually funny is supposed to be a joke. And so many things that feel like they're supposed to be funny because of the way they give the lines is painfully unfunny.
I mean, there is another part in it that was pretty funny though. When the guy uses the machete to cut the can open and he slices his thumb off.
I thought this was tonally way out of place though.
Well, I mean, they said that he was using some sort of it was like laughing gas or something. Like it was mostly air in a canister, but it also had a little bit of laughing gas in it.
I
so
know,
he was a bit high.
I know why he's making this mistake, but I'm saying tonally for the movie, it felt so out of place that there's this weird scene all of a sudden where he's trying to impress the woman that was in the jails, because there's like a few random civilians that are in the other jail cells, and he's trying to impress one that he thinks is attractive, and he goes to chop off the end of this tin with a machete and cuts off his finger, and there's this whole pause where they wait and look at what he's done, and he picks
like
up
blood squirting out of the thumb.
And it's just this like slapstick comedy moment, and I think this moment and the very end of the movie felt so tonally just like it's somewhere along the way someone wanted to make this like a 2001 popcorn crowd pleaser movie instead of whatever the original intent was supposed to be.
Those are actually like my 2 favorite parts of the movie though, or like when stuff was working for me. It was when they did the slapstick part here, and then the very last moment when our 2 main characters actually have character.
Yeah, but they didn't have that character the whole movie.
I know,
it was
which
forced.
is why
it was terrible.
Well, where was this the whole film? Because I enjoyed that bit.
But this is the problem. Like, you can't say that's good. Like, it's bad.
Yes, I can. I'd say that's the good part of the film. Like, the rest of it wasn't as good.
Because the whole rest of the movie does not set up for them having this attitude at the end. It's weird.
But I wish it did. Like, I wish they had this coolness for the rest of the film. Like, oh, there it is. Like, why not be a little bit more self-aware and like meta even if you wanted to, and have Ice Cube like look at the camera more, or have like Natasha actually have some attitude, and have, I don't know, like if you want, I feel like if he wanted to be a little bit Verhoeven, like he could have, you know, with this made a little bit of Starship Troopers in this or something, but
like
it's missing that the stuff that's here and in the thumb cutting scene and the stuff that's in the very last moment of the movie. I'm like, oh, I like this. Like, it made me smile.
The movie did not earn that ending though, because it didn't, like, this whole friendship that her and Ice Cube are supposed to have built is so unearned. Like, they don't do any, like, they
have respect for each other, I guess.
They kind of save each other, but you don't feel the weight of any of the moments. Everything is so I don't think any of it works. And
it is funny that since we already brought it up, that they are clearly about to make the exact same mistake again and just go mow down a bunch of ghosts and possibly get possessed.
Yeah, the movie ends with like the ghosts have invaded the city and Natasha Henstridge is getting out of bed, and then the door slams open, and it's Ice Cube, who's already like escaped from her. Like that's part of the movie is that he's already run away from her, and he throws her a chrome machine gun.
Yes.
And then
that's how you kill a ghost.
The movie ends with them walking off with their chrome machine guns and saying, "Let's kick some ass." And the movie does not set up for that tone at all. It's stupid. Every decision these characters make is absolutely dumb. Like, for example, after they've decided they all have to work together and they have to get to the train, which they're expecting back by a certain time, they make a point of going out relatively quietly and they're just trying to get to the train and wait for it, right? But the train's not there in time. It's delayed because it's a train. Trains are always delayed, even on Mars, apparently. And Ice Cube just says, "Oh, let's just do what we should have done in the first place." And he just dual wields 2 machine guns and we get something that almost feels like an Uwe Boll scene. This scene where they walk down the main street of this little town, just firing machine guns at all these random, like, savage alien dudes coming at them, feels like an Uwe Boll House of the Dead action scene where nothing has any weight to it. There's no stakes. Some of the red shirts do die, but like nothing really feels like it means anything. In fact, one of the big problems I have with the direction in this movie is that anytime there's any kind of like fighting going on, like there's no urgency or momentum to it. Like there's a scene early on where they're going through one of the buildings and one of the possessed people jumps out and attacks Henstridge, and I think Jason Statham's there. But there's like a good few seconds of them just fighting in like a wide shot, and it just looks like actors play fighting because
it really does. I think they slowed it down too much, or they didn't speed it up enough. Like, it looks like they're doing the choreograph like.
Well, maybe some trickery would help it, but I think it's just a case of they did not like rehearse this. They did not have someone telling them this is how quick you have to move to make it look convincing. So it looks too slow. It looks awkward. It looks like, you know how like when you watch old episodes of Star Trek, the original series, and they get into a fight scene. And
careful where you're going with this.
Oh come on! You have to admit the fight scenes in the original Star Trek are pretty. Yeah, it's kind of on almost at that level, right? They're trying to do more normal fight moves, but it still feels like that. And
yeah, it feels a little bit like one of the villains is coming up and he's like, "I'm going to swing at you this way, so you better hurry up and block me with your other whatever weapon you're using."
So there's a lot of that, and every time there's any kind of fighting, it feels like that. But it's especially bad in this big scene where they're going down the street, they're firing 100 bullets. And then they start hitting people with guns, even though I don't think anyone says they're out of ammo. They just start like using them as melee weapons for some reason.
So, I mean, I don't know the rules, but it seems like the host has to die in order for the ghost to get out. It can't just transfer at will.
I don't think that ever comes up in the movie, but seemingly yes, that seems to be the case.
That seems to be the rules that we get here. But like, if you knock someone out, then is the ghost trapped? Like. And also, Natasha seems to have the cure. The cure is methamphetamine. So, and then, like, if everybody just gets, super high, I guess, like, there's not going to be anyone for the ghost to possess and they can trap them, or I don't know.
Well, hold on, you should explain that scene. You just kind of threw that out there without any explanation. So basically...
Well, we sort of talked. I guess we danced around it, but we sort of brought it up.
But we didn't talk about what actually happened. So, basically, Clea DuVall is also an idiot because... So there's a guy who gets infected who they've got in the jail cell.
In a cell.
So they just shut the cell and it's like, okay, he's contained, no big deal. And that is obviously the solution here, is that all of these people who are possessed, all you have to do is imprison them and they're no danger to anyone, right? But Clea DuVall basically just gets creeped out enough that she decides to shoot him in the head. Randomly. And there's like almost no build up to it. It just happens in the middle of another scene. In fact, it happens in the scene where Jason Statham takes Natasha Henstridge to a back room and says, "Hey, things are going quite south here. This may be the last chance we have to have sex." And she's like, "You know what? Maybe." And she kisses him. And I thought the tone of this scene was telling me that she was playing along because she was about to hit him in the nuts or something like that. But because they get interrupted by a scream or a gunshot that happens elsewhere, it feels like no, she was actually just going along with it. And I have a problem with that because nothing in this movie with her character ever suggested that she was ever going to fall for this guy.
I don't think that she was ever like in love with the guy,
Well, no,
or
no, but
you know.
no, I'm not saying she's in love with him, but like the movie did not justify to me. It didn't. It felt fake. It didn't feel real that she was going to just give in and say, "Yeah, let's have sex. Why not?" It didn't feel real that she was making that decision.
No, I mean, honestly, like I kind of enjoyed the moment because it was very much like, because this is the matriarchy. This is the part where like it kind of kicks in a little bit, where you know he's being a little bit scuzzy because he really wants to have sex with her, but ultimately she's the one that has to decide. Yeah, okay, we can do it. And why not? Like, she probably thinks she's going to die too, and he's an attractive enough guy and he wants to go for it, and she's like, okay, yeah. I don't know, like it worked for me.
It did not work for me, and I think saying this is tied into the matriarchy thing is a bit of a stretch.
I don't think so. I think because the patriarchy, you have to have like this, relationship of, oh, the idyllic patriarchy is you have to be a wife, you have to be available for your husband, and that's how like that's the only way that you're supposed to like have sex. And in this world where the matriarchy, no, like we're the ones that make the decisions.
The problem with what you're saying here, Tara, is that every sci-fi horror movie that's ever been made has characters that are trying to have sex. And even in all those movies, unless the guy is very problematic, he usually gets an okay from the other person to have the sex. I don't see how this is any different.
I don't know. It just came off as like he really wants to, but like she's the one that's ultimately in charge. So all he can do is just like flirt until she's like, let's go. And it does feel a bit colder, but it doesn't feel like a romance.
But how is that different from any other, like, anything remotely healthy where the guy has to wait for an okay? How is it any different from any of those?
Because it really felt like she was in control. They didn't feel equal. It felt like she had all the power.
I think you're giving it too much credit, but fair enough.
Maybe I see something that's it's easier for women to see.
I don't think so.
I don't know. I enjoyed it.
I don't know. It felt really false to me that she was remotely even given in or considering having sex with him. But anyway, they're interrupted because Clea DuVall decides to shoot the possessed guy in the jail cell. And all I'm thinking is, you idiot. Now the ghost is going to come out and possess one of you.
I know. I actually thought it was really dumb that nobody else called her an idiot.
Yeah,
why would you do that?
Why are they not all pissed at her?
They're all like, uh-oh. It could be any one of us. Like, okay. No, you should be really upset with her.
No, not only should they be pissed at her immediately, they should especially be pissed at her after it possesses Natasha Henstridge and they have to toss her outside. Like, they have to, like, throw her outside and basically consider her dead because she's been possessed. And, like, why aren't any of you mad at her for this? Like, she did this to her, effectively. And it's almost like we can't even play with the idea that they don't know what, because they could have done like a The Thing style moment here where it's like one of us has been possessed and we don't know which one it is. But I think it's almost like Carpenter, because he made The Thing, didn't want to like retread that ground.
Yeah, it's always obvious who's been possessed.
Yeah, so it's always immediately clear who's been possessed because she immediately like reacts and like goes down into like a almost like a seizure styles thing, and then it's like, okay, well, she's been possessed, well, I guess we'll throw her outside. But Jason Statham thinks to give her weird like LSD pill or whatever it is and
let her have one more trip.
Yeah. But would you believe it, this thing does not agree with the ghost and the ghost ends up being coughed up out of her mouth. So they have found a cure. So two things have been established at this point in the movie. The way to neutralize these enemies is to just trap them somewhere so they're not a danger to anyone, because killing them just makes the ghosts that are in them spread to someone else and it'll just kill more people. Number two, there is a cure, right?
Which means you're just mowing down people that could potentially be cured also.
Yes. So, which leads me to why the entire, like, so they have a big fight scene as, like, all the enemies, like, swarm the police building they're in, right? And they have a bit of an escape. Some characters die. Between the first action scene and this one, there's people getting their limbs and heads lopped off. The red shirt guy gets his arm cut off and then his head cut off.
Yeah, I like that he gets his arm sliced off. And then he's still like, I'm going to keep fighting. And he still like starts shooting at everybody until he gets decapitated by the same like buzzsaw thing.
And that's all fine. Honestly, I thought these action scenes were pretty boring though. I enjoyed the arm getting cut off, sure. Like, that's obviously fun, but for the most part, these action scenes, kind of like what we were saying before about the fighting, just feeling kind of like play fighting. It never really felt like it had any like weight to it or any sense of real threat or danger.
Yeah, it could have been more.
But so they're on the run, the train's here now, and they're trying to get to the train, right? And they have this big thing where they get to the train. Some of them have died along the way, but most of the main characters get onto the train, and the train's moving. I did think it was weird that none of the possessed people try and jump on the train while it's still going slow enough to jump onto. It's especially dumb because when they come back later and try and leave again, they do jump on the train, and I thought, why didn't they just do that the first time? This is weird. But they're on the train and they're out of there. They've actually made it out with most of the main people we care about. They're on their way out of the town. Everything's good. And Natasha Henstridge, the dumb bitch, right? Oh, I shouldn't say Natasha. I should say Lieutenant Melanie Ballard, the dumb bitch. She says, stop the train, we have to go back. And I'm like, what's this now? We're 20 minutes from the end of the movie, Natasha. Why do we have to go back?
We need a big explosion.
And she says, we have a chance to stop this. And she's immediately like, what can we do? And like the scientist lady who's there, who's been around since the jail cell stuff, is like, oh, there's a nuclear power plant, we could Chernobyl it and set off a nuke. And someone actually asked the real question that I was thinking at this point is like, but if we nuke them and they all die, does that not all just mean the ghosts are all free to go and get other people? And the doctor lady simply goes, I don't know. So, Natasha Henstridge's character forces them to go back, which, by the way, kills every single one of them except her and Ice Cube. They all die in this mission to go back.
Mm-hmm.
They set off the nuke, but they accomplish absolutely nothing. Right? Maybe they kill a lot of the human hosts, but the mere fact...
Who could be cured, by the way.
The mere fact that the city at the end is being invaded by the ghostly spirits and possessing people is probably the same group of ghosts that came from these bodies that they blew up, meaning that this idiot character has gotten an entire team killed, has doomed probably thousands of people in this city. Like, every single death from this point on is on her hands, and all she had to do was just leave. And
tell people to care.
This might be one of the most forced we have to go back things I have ever heard in a movie. Normally when a character, like in this part where they could get away and they say, no, we have to go back, there's usually a good reason. You have to go back and save Newt from the Alien Queen, right? You understand it. It may not be the smartest choice from a logic perspective, but you understand why the character believes in it. But not only do we not have that emotional hook with this character, up until this moment, this character's not even talked about trying to contain this situation. They've never even brought it up.
No, and like, I mean, they could have done a little bit more with it if, like, because she was possessed for a very short period of time, and she talks about like, oh, I saw what they looked like.
Yeah, we actually
get civilization. So she could be like, I know their weakness or something, you know.
Yeah, we get a glimpse of what they look like. It's just very brief, but you see like sort of lizard men or something, like in her vision.
Yeah, they look weird.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently the ghosts have been dormant, but all the people, digging things up and mining and stuff is what's, unleashed them upon the world.
Greedily and
Although,
too deep.
Yeah, what's weird is there's a little flashback with the doctor lady who was there. Then despite the fact that she was the one who opened the door that let these things out, she didn't get possessed until like towards the end of the movie.
What an Eve move of her. Yeah.
So, but there's like they find like a door in like the in the mountains that's like these things are all inside. And so you just had to open... I mean, I guess, okay, I understand the curiosity. You found a clearly intelligent life made a door on Mars, like long before humans ever got there. I admit I get why they're curious, but, it does also unleash this thing that ends up killing lots of people. And probably everyone on the planet by the end.
Yeah. I think she compares it to cicadas. Like, their souls go underground and wait out until the next rain season or whatever, which has been millions of years in this case, but like cicadas when they go underground for 7 years and come back out.
Yeah, I don't think cicadas actually have their ghosts leave their body, though. I think that's not quite how that works. Just a
I
thought.
don't think so either.
Just a sneaking suspicion. Yeah, like I was like I was thinking the characters were making little dumb decisions like throughout the whole movie, and then Clea DuVall shot the possessed guy when they've clearly established at this point that the spirits will leave and then go into someone else. So all you're doing is doing someone else, and I thought that was like, oh my god, they've just reached a new low for how dumb these characters can be. And then it got to Natasha Henstridge wanting to go back to nuke the place when I'm like, so you want to free all the spirits to go and look for new hosts?
Mm-hmm.
Does that not strike you as a dumb move? And even when the doctor says, hey, that's might exactly be what happens, we don't know for a fact that nuking them will actually achieve anything other than maybe make it worse by spreading them further, they still go back and do it.
Yep.
And I didn't even notice when Clea DuVall get killed. She definitely did get killed because they all get killed on the way back to the train. But
I don't think I remember the scene where she gets killed.
I didn't see her get killed. I saw Jason Statham get grabbed. I saw both the train driver guys. Like one gets disked and like gets his like throat slit. The other one, I think, gets hit when he's like falling off the train. But I did miss a few of the other deaths because it's just a mess of things happening. It's hard to like. It's not well constructed where things lead into the other things or you get a sense of the geography. It's all just kind of a mishmash of
There's
violence.
no like someone getting sliced in the throat and then they have like a realization that, oh my god, this is my last moment alive. And or like the camera focuses on the terror in their face or anything like that. Everything's pretty neutral even when people are dying.
Yeah. There's very little personality, emotion, or character like across the board in this movie.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, in fact, the biggest death moment probably comes from the leader of the possessed people because he has this big moment where he's actually on the train at the end and Ice Cube disconnects the last train car and he's like set up some explosives. So he's sort of standing on the front of this train car as it explodes behind him and he's screaming. And it's just kind of it's honestly it's pretty laughable bad. Like it's
fun. Yeah, it is, but it's fun to look at least because he is at least, I don't know, filming a death scene that feels important.
Like I could probably enjoy it as a bad movie if it was more like moments like that. Instead, like all the weird
it could definitely use a riff tracks.
Yeah. All the weird structural things though, where it does the crossfades or it goes back and like says, here's the other side of this story, but the other side of that story was just one quick moment. We could have just cut, like we could have had like, instead of cutting back to when Pram Grier separated from Natasha and went and found all these bodies hanging up in a building, you could have literally just have her like reunite with Natasha, say, hey, I found something, and as she says it, just do a quick like 2-second flash of what she saw as she's speaking.
I mean, it should all be, it mostly is anyway, but it should all be from Natasha's perspective since she's the one who's telling the story. So it kind of cheats that a little bit, but I suppose she is technically a bit of an unreliable narrator because in the end she says like, oh, I don't know how Ice Cube got away, but we see that he, that they have like a moment together.
Yeah, but I also thought it was weird though because she doesn't really let him away. He handcuffs her and he says, I'm going now, and I handcuffed you because I knew you wouldn't let me, and she tries to hold a gun up to him and she decides not to shoot him, sure, but I thought maybe like it'd be more of an ending if she's like, yeah, you know what, like you don't deserve to be arrested for this, on you go, like, get lost, I'll see you some other time.
I thought that was kind of like the understanding.
They could have done more, but there was like I've seen this done better. I've seen everything in this movie done better. Like some of it's in John Carpenter's other movies, which is the really insane thing. Yeah,
I mean, it would have been great if this was like a 3:10 to Yuma moment.
Like there's a lot of Assault on Precinct 13. There's a decent amount of The Thing, and then there's even some aliens, and which is obviously not John Carpenter, but obviously there's a little bit of some other things squeaking in here. So. Because there's this team going into this area where something bad's already happened. That's very Aliens, But it's, I don't know. It's a hodgepodge of other sci-fi movies where if it wasn't as like just shittily constructed and directed with all these edgy characters trying to sound cool. Like at one point, what was the line? So the little group that Ice Cube's got that try to break him out, and they all die quite quickly in the big action scene, but there's a little bit of them, and they're not great actors, but the brother one, Uno, he says to Natasha Henstridge that he wants to slice off her tits. That was a line of dialogue. And then she kind of awkwardly like does like a, grab the arm and sort of pin him down and said, "Who's in charge here?" But that, obviously, as we said, all the action like this looks really bad because it looks too slow. It doesn't feel like she really knows what she's doing. It feels like she's been taught the little move and she's kind of doing it slowly.
Yeah.
But
she could have put a little bit more into it.
But the point I'm making though is the line, "I'm going to slice those tits off," is just such a like edgelord. Like, this feels like a 13-year-old wrote that line.
Okay, well, you're insulting your favorite director now.
How is this different from me saying the rest of the movie's been shit the entire time?
He's not 13.
He was probably about 50 by the time he made this, but I'm still going to critique it. This was a horrible line of dialogue. Besides,
yeah, it was fine.
It may have been the co-writer. I don't know.
It could have been. You're right.
But
the Doom fan.
That's. I don't know. I feel like you're stonewalling me here, but like, this movie's terrible. I'm sorry. Like, I don't have anything. Like, I can go for some constructive suggestions how to fix specific moments, I guess, but the entire thing is just built on like a weird structure with characters who are unlikable, bland, and everything that they have is just trying to be cool because it's the post-Matrix world and it's going to be holding chrome guns and dual-wielding pistols and just like, it's got that. What was that movie? Funnily enough, actually, it was the remake of Assault on Precinct 13, where that came out in like 2005. And one of the complaints I had about that movie is that every time anyone was in a shootout and they were just standing still firing a gun, it looked really boring. Like they weren't doing anything to make it feel like an exciting shootout. And I felt that same thing here. Every time there was a shot of someone just standing firing a gun, like there's one moment when Clea DuVall's got two handguns and she's just like, "Oh yeah," and she's just firing them left and right. And I thought, you just look like you're an actor standing there just going like this. Like, there's no like thirst to it. There's no sense of actual danger around her.
Yeah, and also there's just no like care put into it.
Yeah.
Put into the scene in any way.
It's because it's one thing to have a movie that's kind of flawed and doesn't quite work or it doesn't quite click. Some of the elements don't quite come together. But right from the get-go, this feels like everything's off. Like everything's not working.
I mean, you think at some point during the production, someone would have said like, "So when they die, we become vulnerable. Why are we killing them?"
Yes.
So many of them.
Well, that's what's so annoying though, is they do bring it up later. They talk about it before they're going to make their escape to try and get to the train, but as they're talking about it and raising this concern, I'm like, but you've already like did a whole scene where you were massacring dozens and dozens of them without any care in the world. Why was there no consequences to that? There should have been consequences. In fact, honestly, you killed enough of them that every single one of you should be possessed right now. Every single one of you.
Yeah.
But,
and the ghost that was possessing Syl, like, does it die? Because we see it like leave her body, but we don't.
That's a good point. That should have possessed someone else. And isn't it lucky that there's a very specific finite number? Like, they've all got hosts, so there's none left. So it's only when we kill one that there's another. That one can then repossess someone. Which I guess they kind of set up because they mentioned that when this cloud of ghosts originally came, and there's a quick flashback to this. They say that all the miners all like fell asleep, and then when they woke up, they turned into this. But there was a small percentage that didn't turn, and those were just murdered by the others that had turned possessed. So I guess
they could literally take ghost inventory and keep track.
Yeah,
so like they know like, oh, we have them all.
That defines how many there actually are. That I guess that does set up. No, there's exactly say 62 ghosts. So there can only be 62 possessed people at one time. Like,
unless they find another door.
Right. That said, though, Jason Statham says there's 200. It didn't look like 200 to me. I think he was bumping the numbers to make it sound more dramatic. It looked more like 50, but I'll take his word for it. So maybe there's 200, but
that's such a Jason Statham thing to do.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. God, this is such shit. Like it's such shit from the get-go. It's full of tropes from 2001. It feels like Carpenter's just doing all the things that everyone else was doing in 2001. And when I say it feels like it could have been directed by any work-for-hire director, who would just churn out a movie at that time period. That's what it feels like. There is not a single lick of this that actually feels like John Carpenter. In fact, the very fact that it's ripping off a couple of his movies makes it feel even less like him, because you would assume that he wouldn't rip off his own movies. It feels like someone else imitating those movies. The fact that it's him is just kind of surreal and sad. So
maybe he was like, I want to make Assault on Precinct 13 and The Thing again, but I want to do it right this time. I'm going to put it on Mars.
Tara, I don't wish violence upon you. I don't want to wish violence upon you, but you're testing my patience.
What? Maybe he thought that. Who knows?
No, he didn't. I know. To answer your question, I know. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, dear. I guess that's there's probably some other things I could complain about if I stopped and thought about it some more, but I just, right from because the very first thing that happens in this movie is there's narration telling you things and there's text telling you things, and those two things are different, and it's impossible to pay attention to both. And that's just the first sign that this movie is poorly constructed and there's no thought put into it, and it's just going to constantly make weird mistakes. And then top of the dumb characters, the characters that have no personality, that are not as cool as the script wants you to think they are. Sometimes when they're delivering lines that are supposed to be cool, it sounds like they're trying really hard, or they're not trying at all. But either way, it's not working. Natasha's sleepwalking through the movie. I'm like, you know what? Maybe you being the silent, sexy one was playing to your strengths,
Honestly, I think Species is just a better directed movie, which is odd because it seems like it should be just a dumb B movie and an excuse to show off boobs, but it's actually kind of a thoughtful, or not thoughtful, but like a well thought out, and had like some good sci-fi in it.
Yeah, I don't think it's thoughtful, I think the first thing you said I think is the accurate thing. I think it's just better directed. Like, it's like for all the schlockiness that movie kind of is, the director,
because it still has, like, even though she's pretty silent in that, she still is sympathetic.
Well, no, but like, the director, even if the movie's as schlocky as it is, that director still wanted to do the best he could with it. It feels that way when you watch it. He's trying to make good scenes. He's trying to make the tension work. He's trying to do all these things. And
Too bad about the ending.
Like,
yeah.
Like, if there's one thing I can say about this movie, is that John Carpenter did not care about this. I like, genuinely, he could not have cared about this, because the things that this movie's doing are just sloppy. They're just bad. There's no way he thought he was making great decisions with some of this. It all says to me he just didn't care, and he was doing it for the paycheck or whatever else it may be at this point.
Yeah, probably.
And I think you can probably say that. Like, I think you track his work from the early 90s to about now, and you can see this just slope of, like...
Yeah, I feel like a lot of directors have that, which, feels kind of sad, but maybe it's just, they make their masterpieces and then they're like, yeah, I'll keep working because I don't want to be bored. And unless you're Carpenter and you're like, well, it turns out video games are really fun, but like, I don't know. It happens to a lot of directors. They have a prime.
Yeah, it doesn't happen to all of them, but it does. Like, Brian De Palma's the same way. He was great for like 2 decades or so.
He made a Mars movie.
That's true. He did make a Mars movie, and it was pretty bad. Wasn't as bad as this. Mission to Mars is better than Ghost to Mars. I think that's a pretty fair statement.
They're probably about equal.
No, they're not. Shut up. That is one of the dumbest things you've ever said.
That can't be true.
That's one of the dumbest things you've ever said. Mission to Mars is not good, but it still feels like a professional made it.
I don't know. It felt pretty... I remember we did not like that movie, especially me.
No, I didn't like the movie, but you can't just say these two are equal. They're not. This is far worse. This is horrendously constructed. This is terribly
I'd
paced.
have to watch both back to back.
No, you're absolutely off your mind if you think these are equal. You're off your mind.
Off my meds, you mean?
All right, I'm just going to repeat myself. So let's rate this piece of shit and get on with it. I'll just pretend Tara didn't say something as ridiculous as she just said, and we can move on with our lives. what are you rating Ghost of Mars?
I'll give it a 5.
5?
Yeah, I don't really think it's the worst. I think like there's a lot of plot holes. There's some silliness in it that makes me giggle, but I don't know. I don't think it's the worst.
I think this movie is legitimately about one step away from movie bowl.
I've never seen a football film. Can't wait.
Jesus. For me, this is a 2.5.
Okay.
I think it's
So I
that
doubled
bad.
your score.
What's that?
I doubled you.
Yeah, she did. She doubled my score. I think the fundamental weird little filmmaking things this does are absolutely baffling. I think the characters are bland, if not annoying. There's little to care about. The only thing, like, I like the idea of the movie and the general setting of it. Like, I could see a good version of this being made by someone who gives a shit, but it's very clear that no one did. And even actors in this who I know can be good all come off poorly. The character decisions are frustrating, and when the characters try to act cool, especially at the very end when like this girl kicks some ass, like we're supposed to like cheer as it goes to credits, I'm like, F you. I'm like, F you, I hope you both die horribly. That was how I felt. So
I was like, where were these characters the whole film?
I think this is even worse than the reputation suggested to me, and I've been hearing how bad it is for like 20 years at this point. So
I'll probably watch it again.
Well, you are a glutton for punishment. But that is
I like what I like.
That is the movie. You can let us know what you think of it in the comments. Next time we will be looking at Honey We Shrunk Ourselves, which is a weird pivot. But we'll be doing that next time to round off the Honey I Shrunk the Kids trilogy, which we've done the first 2 entries of course. So we'll do that next time, and Tara only has about maybe 4 episodes left, I think, give or take.
Something like that.
Before David swaps in. The plan is after we do our last few movies, Tara's final episode is going to be her redoing her top 50 sci-fi movies of all time, and consider it an exit interview of sorts.
I better start working on that list.
Yeah, to see how much your list has changed and evolved after your 200 plus episodes of the show. So
that's true. We have watched some good stuff I had not seen before.
Yes, and some terrible stuff like this episode. So
I don't think this one's gonna make my list. Yeah.
It better not. It better not.
Maybe honorable mentions.
I'll tell you right now.
What are you gonna do? Fire me?
I'll set you on fire.
What? That's on camera. If I die by fire, you guys know who did it.
Luckily, the distance between us gives me a good bit of an alibi.
But there's a lot of fire here. So.
Unless I have somehow developed very, very long distance pyrokinesis, I think I'm in the clear. But
yeah. Or you could hire somebody. Hire Tim.
Tim,
Tim the arsonist.
Do you happen to own a flamethrower, Tim?
If he was on Mars, he'd be a arsonist.
You said rule of threes would make that work. It did
comedy
not work.
Comes in 3.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Look how happy it made me.
That's the show, everyone.
Right. I'll see you next week
support us on Patreon if you like for bonus content and help keep the show coming and all that stuff. And you can go and check out the other shows. Check out Collector's Cut that I did with David, or Streams After Midnight, which is the horror movie podcast that I did with Tim. All worth having a look at. But that is the episode. In fact, I should mention for October, we do a lot of extra episodes of Screams After Midnight because it's the month of horror. So we have the Octoberthon, which we had 4 episodes out this week, which was a lot of editing work, I have to say. I'm tired. I'm tired and I'm ready for October to be over.
Yep. And everyone gets to reap the benefits of so many episodes.
They do. And they better enjoy it, because I had to watch Subspecies 2 and Subspecies 3 and very soon Subspecies 4 and 5. And it's all Tim's fault. I'm holding him accountable. Anyway.
Did you say count because it's a vampire?
No, I did not.
You could use that joke if you want.
I would rather cut off my hand.
What? Why don't you want to bring joy to people? Let the joy into your life.
I think the problem is that like I'm too emotionally affected by this movie, and I'm not here for lighthearted humor, right, and bad puns, because that's what that was. That was a bad pun. Let's not pretend otherwise. All right, I'm done. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Keep watching science fiction and computer at Salsa.